Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco? Is
Yes.
she the
Bigger than Sabalenka? Bigger than Coco? Dude, it's crazy. She's having the same effect that Joao Fonseca was having. An absolute rock star. Those weren't the words of an excited fan. They came from former ADP pro Steve Johnson, a player who spent more than a decade competing against the biggest names in tennis. What makes his statement remarkable is that he wasn't talking about a Grand Slam champion or a world number one. He was talking about 20-year-old Alex Eala from the Philippines, a player who, just 18 months earlier, was ranked number 140 in the world. Yet by the time Indian Wells 2026 arrived, she had become one of the most talked about athletes in tennis, forcing the sport to rethink who truly captures the public's attention. The question was no longer whether Eala belonged on the biggest stage. It was whether she could turn the growing hype into another unforgettable run at Indian Wells, or if there was still one final gap to close before her arrival at the very top was complete. To understand how quickly everything changed, rewind to March 2025. Eala entered the Miami Open as a wild card with almost no expectations. She wasn't seeded, most casual fans had never heard her name, and few believed she could make any real impact. Then she shocked the tennis world. She defeated Madison Keys before producing an even bigger upset by eliminating Iga Swiatek, the dominant force in women's tennis. Her incredible run made her the first Filipino player in history to reach the semifinals of a WTA 1000 event. It wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a moment that changed the direction of her career. By the end of the season, Eala had climbed to world number 50, captured her first WTA 125 title in Guadalajara, and signed a global ambassador partnership with Nike. During a visit to Nike's headquarters in Oregon, portraits celebrating both her success and her Filipino heritage lined the walls, symbolizing how far she had come in such a short time. The momentum carried into 2026. At the Dubai Tennis Championships, Eala delivered another statement performance by defeating 8th seed Jasmine Paolini in straight sets, opening with a dominant 6-1 set before sealing the victory in a tiebreak. Days later, the updated rankings placed her at world number 31, the highest ranking ever achieved by a Filipino woman in WTA history. Then the Indian Wells draw was released. As the 31st seed, Eala earned a first-round bye and landed in a section of the draw that could set up a blockbuster third-round clash with Coco Gauff. Suddenly, the same analysts who had once overlooked her name were circling her as one of the tournament's biggest attractions. The excitement spread far beyond the rankings. YouTube channels rushed to analyze her rapid rise, podcasts debated how she had become one of tennis's fastest-growing stars, and fans packed her practice sessions. On the Nothing Major podcast, Steve Johnson delivered the quote that quickly spread across tennis media, comparing Eala's popularity to the electric fan frenzy surrounding Joao Fonseca. His comments simply confirmed what tournament crowds had already made obvious. Eala wasn't just winning matches, she was filling stadium seats and creating an atmosphere that rivaled the sport's biggest names. This was no longer a story about untapped potential. It was the emergence of a commercial and competitive force that much of the tennis establishment had failed to recognize. The evidence had been building ever since Miami. A player ranked number 140 had beaten 2 top 10 opponents in the same week, but it was the atmosphere around her matches that stood out just as much as the results. Filipino flags filled the stands, attendance exceeded expectations, and the energy felt more like a sold-out concert than a tennis tournament. What began as an unexpected breakthrough quickly turned into a pattern. Every event brought higher rankings, larger crowds, and stronger support from fans across the globe. Guadalajara delivered her first title. The rankings kept climbing. More Filipino flags appeared at tournaments. More people began believing they were witnessing history. By the time Dubai arrived in February 2026, that belief had become impossible to ignore. After defeating Paolini, Eala looked into the crowd and asked a simple question. Many of you have prayed for me? The thunderous roar that followed revealed something far greater than a single tennis victory. It reflected the hopes and pride of millions of Filipinos around the world who believed they were watching the rise of a once-in-a-generation star.
She's the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world. Yeah.
A few days later, former ADP pro Steve Johnson put into words what fans had already witnessed firsthand. Speaking on the Nothing Major podcast, he made a bold declaration that quickly spread across the tennis world. He didn't describe Alex Eala as a future superstar or simply a rising talent. Instead, he called her the biggest draw in women's tennis, using the present tense. To Johnson, this wasn't a prediction about what Eala might become someday. It was a recognition of what she already was. His exact words were simple but powerful. Absolute rock star. It was a remarkable endorsement from a player who had spent years competing at the highest level, and it reflected a growing reality that tournament crowds, packed practice sessions, and surging fan interest had already made impossible to ignore.
But she is just like an absolute rock star.
When a player who spent 12 years on the ATP Tour, sharing locker rooms with some of the greatest names in tennis, makes a statement like that without being prompted, the tennis world pays attention. Steve Johnson has watched stars rise, fade, and fulfill their potential. He understands the difference between temporary hype and lasting impact. That's why his assessment carried so much weight. He didn't say Alex Eala could become the biggest draw in women's tennis. He said she already was. In his view, she was attracting more attention than established stars like Aryna Sabalenka and Coco Gauff, drawing standing room-only crowds usually reserved for the sport's biggest icons. It was a bold claim, but one that reflected what tournament organizers had already begun to notice. The pattern was impossible to ignore. It started in Miami, continued through Dubai, and followed her to Indian Wells. First came the crowds, arriving in numbers that exceeded expectations. Then came the results on the court. Only afterward did analysts and commentators begin trying to explain what fans had recognized months earlier. Eala wasn't just winning matches, she was building one of the most passionate followings in the sport. Every tournament became another reminder that something different was happening. The timing made Johnson's comments even more significant. They came during the same week Eala received the first Indian Wells seeding of her career, marking another historic milestone for Filipino tennis. At the same time, Nike continued showcasing her at its global headquarters, celebrating not only her success, but also the heritage she proudly represents. Together, those moments suggested something bigger than the rise of a single athlete. They hinted at a changing landscape in tennis. For decades, the traditional path to superstardom was simple: win Grand Slam titles first, then build a worldwide fan base. Eala has been rewriting that formula. Her fans arrived before the biggest trophies. Her commercial appeal grew before she reached the top of the rankings. Tournament organizers from Miami to Indian Wells have witnessed the same phenomenon, a player capable of filling stadiums regardless of her seeding or opponent. Indian Wells now represents the next major test. If the electric atmosphere seen in Dubai carries over, and if the results continue to match the growing expectations, the 2026 season could become the moment the tennis establishment officially acknowledges what Filipino fans have believed since Miami. Every tournament from this point forward, Indian Wells, Miami, Madrid, and Rome, adds another chapter to a story that continues to gather momentum. There is still unfinished business, however. Her quarterfinal loss to Coco Gauff in Dubai, a 6-0, 6-2 defeat, was a reminder that there is another level to reach. Eala never tried to hide from that reality. In her post-match press conference, she admitted that the gap was pretty prominent. But she followed that with a statement that revealed exactly why so many people believe in her future. "I'm on the right path." Just 2 weeks later, she arrived at Indian Wells as a seeded player for the first time at a WTA 1000 event. The progress was undeniable, from her unforgettable wild-card run in Miami to the record-breaking crowds in Dubai, from Steve Johnson's glowing endorsement to Nike's celebration of her journey. Eala has turned fan support into genuine momentum unlike anything women's tennis has seen in recent years. The experts who once overlooked her are now trying to explain how they missed the signs. Millions of Filipinos never did. They believed before the rankings justified that belief. They filled stadiums before the seedings demanded respect. They recognized something special long before the rest of the tennis world caught up. Now the spotlight shifts to Indian Wells. Can Alex Eala transform that belief into another breakthrough run? Or is there still one final hurdle before she reaches the sports elite? Share your prediction in the comments. And if you've been following her journey since that unforgettable week in Miami, you're witnessing one of tennis's most remarkable stories from the very beginning. Subscribe because the biggest chapters may still be ahead.